Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new, my name is Courtney and today kicks off Christmas DIY season on my channel. I'm starting with a Christmas Movie Monday compilation video for you. This is going to cover all the Christmas Movie Mondays that I did last year in October, which include Elf, Grinch, Christmas Story, Christmas Vacation, and Home Alone. So all of those are in one video for you. And then of course, every Monday in October, I'll be bringing you new Christmas movies, tons of DIYs and inspiration. So let's get into today's video. For the first DIY, it's going to be a two-part DIY to make one sign. So I'm going to start with this little witch's feet in a cauldron. This sign came from Dollar Tree. I'm going to remove the twine and then I want to separate the legs from the cauldron. So I thought I could pull it apart, but it didn't come apart very easily. So what I ended up doing was just taking a ruler and kind of where the cauldron has this little bump part, I don't know what you want to call it, this little bump out right here. I just took a ruler, drew a line, connected it, and then I'm just going to use my hobby knife to cut this apart. Now I did want to say that this idea came from Jennifer from Little Bit of Common Crazy. I saw her do a cute pair of elf feet and when I remembered her doing that DIY, I was like, okay, I've got to do it too.
Yeah, let's go outside. We can hang out on the beach without freezing.
These shoes had little heels and I knew I did not want the heels on them, so I just took a pencil and just kind of freehanded how I wanted the bottom to look. And then again, I just used my little hobby knife from Arteza and I just cut those off. Then once that was done, I removed the buckles and then used my heat gun to kind of get that remaining glue residue that was still on there. And then the legs were prepped for painting.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? In Christmas times, we'll be chilling and having a good time.
The actual last step is to remember to fill these holes. So I'm just going to put some spackling in these, let them dry, and then I will be ready to paint. So I'm going to start by painting the legs. I'm just going to use Maze by Waverly. Then for the boots, I'm going to use Ink by Waverly. And then for the jacket, I'm going to use Fern by Waverly. And I'm only going to end up putting one coat on all parts of this little elf. Now I'm going to let Buddy's little legs rest or dry, I should say. And here I'm going to make a sign that's going to be attached to his legs. Now, I lost the footage of this, but this white board right here is just one of the Dollar Tree planks. It comes in, I think, a 4-pack from Dollar Tree, and I just painted it with Waverly white chalk paint. And then for this, I found a free SVG cut file on Pinterest, and I can't make a printable of it because it is not my design, but I will link down the where I got it down below in the description box. And I'm just going to attach this vinyl to this sign. And then once it's attached, the last step is just to glue Buddy's legs to the top of the sign. And then this thing is finished. Moving into this DIY, this is one of the complimentary DIYs, I'm calling it. It's not elf themed, but it kind of goes with that vibe. It's going to be a rustic looking snowflake garland, and what I'm using is I've got 5 wooden snowflakes. Those came from Hobby Lobby. I've got some twine. I've got these white felt balls that I ordered from Amazon, and then I've got some wooden beads, which I just had on hand that I also always order from Amazon. The ones I love are always linked down in the description box down below. So what I'm doing now is trying to figure out what I wanted my pattern to be in between the snowflakes, and if I wanted to use natural color beads or dark colored beads.
No, he wouldn't miss this in Christmas time.
Moving into this part of the garland, I have a happy accident, as Bob Ross would say. I was glad how it turned out, but originally this is what I was thinking. I wanted it snowflake, felt ball, wooden bead, felt ball, snowflake, felt ball, wooden bead, felt ball, and that was going to be my pattern. Well, when I went to string them up on the twine, I wasn't paying attention on how I should string them up, and I out of old habits, just did an AB pattern and just went felt ball, wooden bead, felt ball, wooden bead, which would not leave me with this pattern right here. But that's okay. I was actually happy with how it turned out. And what I'm using here is it was called a felting needle on Amazon. It's a blunt tip needle, and I'm just using that to string my twine through the felt balls and the wooden beads. The last step before assembling my garland is I wanted to do a dry brush over these snowflakes. So I'm using some of the Whoville chalk paint in the color plaster, and I'm just dry brushing both sides of these snowflakes, and then I'll be ready to put my garland together.
With the skyline painted in blue. Ooh, yeah, that's what we do. We'll be chilling and having a good time. Doesn't matter if
Here is how I'm going to attach my snowflakes. So I took a piece of twine that I cut and I folded it in half, and I am feeding it through the top of the hole of the snowflake. Then I'm going to pull these two tails through the loop. And then once I do that, I'm going to be ready to attach it to the garland. And to get this attached, I'm simply going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue on the twine. And then once I do that, I'm going to flip it over and then put some hot glue on the back and fold the two pieces of twine over and then trim off the extra, and it gets nice and attached.
it's falling, all the windows in the rain is pouring. It will always be Christmas in my heart. But this year I wanna hang out with my friends and family, making angels in the sanctuary. Doesn't matter, it is Christmas in my heart.
The last thing to do here is on the groups where it's wooden bead, felt ball, wooden bead. I'm just taking a little bit of hot glue and gluing the two wooden beads to that felt ball in the center just to kind of keep them in place, because the combination of felt ball, wooden bead, felt ball, those stay because those felt balls don't slide on. I mean, they'll slide if you move it with your hand, but they just don't freely slide like the wood beads do. So that's why I'm securing those. And then once that's done, this garland is all finished.
Here we go. All right. Now this Christmas, we're gonna dance. Okay.
For this DIY, we're decorating a Dollar Tree mug. I made this little buddy sticker on my Cricut, but don't forget, Dollar Tree has tons of stickers, especially right now. They've got tons of red and green ones at my Dollar Tree, so you can pick some of those up. I'm just going to take this sticker and or vinyl decal, and I'm going to apply it to my mug. Once that's done, I knew that the mug needed a topper, so I decided to make a little Buddy the Elf hat. And I took a piece of green felt and I just cut a circle. There was no rhyme or reason. I kind of just eyeballed it, and I just kept trimming it and cutting it until I got it down to the shape that I wanted. And then I cut a slit in it on one side of it so that I could curl it up and make it look like a teepee. And I just hot glued that. And then once that was done, I took a piece of yellow felt and I just hot glued that around. And then the last step for the hat was to cut out a little red feather, and I cut that out. And then once I did that, I took some of my small scissors and just kind of went in there and trimmed and snipped at it to make it a little more realistic. And then to pull this whole thing together, I'm just using some black pom-poms here to kind of fill the cup, not because they're going to be noticeable. And honestly, I don't even know where these black pom-poms came from. I've never done a DIY with them, but they were in my stash. And once those are down, I'm going to use some of the white ones to kind of represent the snowballs from when Buddy has a snowball fight. And then his little hat's just going to perch on the snowballs, and then the mug is finished. This next DIY is a Dollar Tree DIY. I found this coffee cup paperclip holder at Dollar Tree in the office supply section, and I'm just going to take the cup portion of it and use some of the crimson Whoville chalk paint, and I'm going to end up giving it 2 coats of paint.
Come on. We're gonna dance, dance, have a good time, dance all night.
While the cup is drying, I'm going to take this free printable that I made. I will make sure to link it down below. And I'm going to pick one of these little emblems to cut out, and I'm just going to cut it out. Once it's cut out, I'm going to take a glue stick and put some glue on it and then stick it to a piece of cardboard. And then I'm just going to trim around it on the cardboard to make this a little extra sturdy. When that's finished, I'm going to take a piece of burlap ribbon that I had in my stash, and I'm just going to hot glue it around the center of the cup. And then the last step here is just to take your little emblem and hot glue that to your burlap ribbon, and then your world's best cup of coffee is all finished.
We're gonna dance and have a good time. I think Santa's gonna come and join us in this song. Doesn't matter if the snow is falling.
For this DIY, I'm going to be using this white frame that I had left over from a Dollar Tree sign, and I need to make it a little bit smaller. I made this printable just so that it would perfectly fit on the bottom tray of my 3-tier tray. It will be linked down below. And I'm going to break down this sign by taking off the bottom. Then I'm going to flip it over and mark it where I need to cut it. Now, I'm going to cut it using my miter shears. So let me tell you this. I just recently acquired these miter shears. I've watched several of my friend YouTubers have them. Jennifer has some. And I'm like, I really need to get some of those. I really need to get some of those. And now I use them like all the time. And I absolutely love them. So I'm going to be able to cut a 45-degree angle with these and get this frame just perfect using the miter shears.
All the windows in the rain is pouring. It will always be Christmas in my heart.
Now I need to put my frame back together, so I'm just going to use some hot glue to glue all of the corners together. Then once that's finished, I wanted to paint the frame. Now this frame was, it had some kind of weird glossy paint on it because I went in with the Fern chalk paint from Waverly, and it like left it, I mean, I liked how it looked, but I couldn't get full coverage. Like it was disappearing as I painted it in some spots, and I didn't feel like sanding this and whatever. So I just kind of went in with one coat to see what it would do, and it actually gave me a really nice distressed look. So I just left it. But yeah, I don't know. I've never really encountered that with a Dollar Tree painted product before where I try to paint on it and it like bubbles up and disappears. It was very weird.
This year I wanna hang out with my friends and family, making angels in the sand.
To get the printable attached to the frame, I'm just going to get it lined up here, and then I'm just going to go in with some hot glue and tack it down. Now normally I would probably go in with a piece of cardstock or a piece of cardboard on the back just to kind of firm up the back, but I thought I'd leave it open just to kind of see. I am planning to work some lights into this tray, so I thought, well, maybe it might light through the sign. I don't know, but you certainly could put it back on it if you'd like to. Then once it's all secured to the frame, I'm just going to take some of the tower blocks from Dollar Tree and put 2 of those on the back side of it, and then this sign is all finished.
It's Christmas in my heart.
Now moving into another complimentary piece of Christmas decor, you're going to need a little sign like this from Dollar Tree. First thing you're going to want to do is break down this frame, remove the back. Once you get the back all removed, you want to paint the frame with some Crimson Waverly chalk paint.
Let's go outside. The snow is falling.
While the frame is drying, you want to work on this other piece. So I'm going to pop the little circle off, and there was a little piece of it left on here, and instead of messing with it, I just flipped it over to the back, and I took this piece of scrapbook paper that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just going to trace around this little back of the sign, and then I'm going to glue this piece of scrapbook paper onto the back of this with a glue stick. And then I ended up popping off that little remaining brown piece, and so I cut a piece of brown craft paper and glued that to the back. So I kind of just went full circle with this, and probably I just made extra steps for myself. But anyway, either way you do it, one side gets the scrapbook paper, the other side is brown.
And every child is having so much fun. The snowman is twice the size as me, with a smile as quirky as mine. We're holding hands to keep each other warm while we stand and watch a choir perform in all the Christmas.
Then I'm going to take the back and I'm going to go ahead and attach it back into my little frame just with some hot glue and get it nice and secure. Then I want to take the circle that I popped out and I'm going to paint that with 2 coats of the Fern Waverly chalk paint.
That we love. Yeah, all the Christmas songs that we love. And in a while we're gonna go inside and drink our chocolate by the fire.
While the circle is drying, I'm going to take this little wooden candy cane sticker from Dollar Tree and I'm going to go ahead and paint it typical candy cane colors. So I'm just going to stripe it with the Waverly white chalk paint. I'm going to go in and do the white first. Then I will go in with the red stripes, which will be the Crimson by Waverly. And I'm also going to paint the bow red. Then once it's all painted and dry, I'm just going to hot glue that to the center of my green circle.
One is to spend this day with you. Let me give you a Christmas, a moment we'll fill with love and joy. So beautiful, kissing on a mistletoe's baby with you.
My final step here is just to take a black Sharpie and I just went in and just went ahead and traced over the bow and just kind of defined it a little bit more. And then this little sign is all finished.
I don't need any presents as long as I spend this day with you. So beautiful, kissing on a mistletoe's baby with you. Ooh.
For this DIY, I'm going to be using some felt balls to make a little garland. So I didn't want to use wooden beads. I wanted to do something a little different and I'm just really loving working with felt balls. I ordered all of these from Amazon. The yellow ones were a pack and then this red, white, and green was a pack, which is great because I'm going to use the red ones later on. And I do end up having some green ones and white ones left over. So I'm going to make this completely elf themed and use yellow, white, and green. And I'm just going to string them on a piece of twine.
Making plans for what we're gonna do. I feel so blessed that I can be with you. 'Cause God knows that I've been longing for you. I just wanna hold you close. You know the stars are shining just for you. Let's take a walk.
Now that all my felt balls are strung on the twine, you can use as many as you want depending on where you're going to put it. I decided on one end I wanted to put a little wooden snowflake. I'm going to use it, leave it this natural color. This snowflake came from a pack from Walmart, and I'm just going to tie it directly on to this string of felt balls. And then for the other end, I'm just going to go ahead and make a tassel. So I'm going to take the twine while it's still attached. Well, that doesn't make sense. I'm going to take the twine, I'm not going to cut it basically, and I'm going to go ahead and just make the tassel directly on this. I'm just going to wrap it around my hand, tie it off, make the little poof, and then wrap a piece of twine and hot glue it to make kind of the little top part of the tassel, trim it, and then this little garland is all finished.
We can follow the moonlight till we reach a place we can stay. Maybe kiss a bit and dream away. And in a while we're gonna go inside and drink our chocolate by the fire. 'Cause all I want is to spend this day with you. Let me give you a Christmas, a moment we'll fill with love and joy. So beautiful, kissing on a mistletoe's baby with you. I don't need any presents as long as I spend this day with you. So beautiful, kissing on a mistletoe's baby with you. Ooh.
For this DIY, all you need is this printable, which will be linked down below, and some of the large popsicle sticks from Dollar Tree. So the first thing you're going to do is cut out all of these little signs. And then once you get them cut out, you want to take some glue. I'm just using a hot glue stick. I'm using a glue stick, and I'm just going to glue these little pieces of paper down to my popsicle sticks. And then once I do that, I'm going to trim them just by using my miter shears.
Ooh. And in a while we're gonna go inside and drink our chocolate by the fire. 'Cause all I want is to spend this day with you. Let me give you a Christmas.
Now that you have all your little pieces, go ahead and arrange them on your popsicle stick how you want them. And then I'm just going to attach these with some hot glue. You certainly could make little arrows if you wanted to as well, but I just went ahead and just did kind of the simple route here. And then once these are all glued down, you do need to make a base for this so that it will stand up. And I'm just going to use 2 of the tower blocks from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to glue one on the front and I'm going to glue one on the back, and that'll be perfect to keep it standing upright.
Moment will fill with love and joy. Loving so beautiful, kissing on a mistletoe, baby, with you.
This last DIY, before I get this all arranged and show you guys how to pull it all together, is a filler, a tray filler. And so what I'm trying to make here is I've got some paint sticks. I got these in a 10-pack from Home Depot for 98 cents. And I'm using my miter shears again, and I'm cutting them down so that I can make kind of a city building skyline. Originally, I was going to try to make the Empire State Building, and I figured out how to do it, but I ran out of time, so that didn't happen. I'm not sure if I'm even going to work this into the tray at this point, but I thought, you know what? Why not? Let's make one just in case. So I'm going to cut these down. Once they're all cut down, I'm going to flip them to the back and take 2 of the large popsicle sticks from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to hot glue them to the back to keep these pieces together. Then I'm going to flip it over and go ahead and paint it with 1 coat of the silver lining Waverly chalk paint. Once that's dry, I'm going to take one of my Arteza markers and I'm just going to go in and freehand. I'm going to outline the buildings with a darker gray. This is actually called koala gray. And then I'm going to go in and just freehand a bunch of windows and doors.
Any presents, as long as I spend this day with you. So beautiful, kissing on a mistletoe, baby, with you. It's cold outside, but the fire keeps us warm. We can spend the night underneath the mistletoe, and I've gotten you a present that I put under the tree.
The front is finished, so now I just need to attach 2 of these tower blocks to the back so that it has a stand and is able to stand up. Then the last thing I decided to do was take one of my white glitter glue sticks and go ahead and put some snow on the top of the building. And then Spence requested that I also put snow on the bottom, so I did that as well. And this little cityscape is all finished.
It is Christmas, the first for you and me. The snow is falling down, and the storm is on its way. But as long as you're around,
Now it's time to start decorating this tray. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have 2 strands of these fairy lights. I got them from Walmart. They were $5.99, but they are the ones that will sync to music. And so if you wanted to have a festive blinking thing to music, that would be perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by taking the fairy lights on the bottom tray, and I'm just going to periodically tape it down because I will be putting batting on this. So I need to make sure that my fairy lights are pretty secure to the base so that it makes my stuff be able to sit on top. So I'm just going to keep wrapping around the base, making sure that the battery pack ends up in the back of the tray. And then I will also wrap the top, but I'm not going to end up using the entire strand. I will show you what I end up doing with the extra once the top is all wrapped.
be okay. 'Cause all I wanna do is spend this holiday with you. Tomorrow it is Christmas.
The lights are all in. Here you can see on the left side the extra lights that are left over from the top tray. Now I'm going to take some batting. This is the soft, medium loft batting from Hobby Lobby. So it's real thin, so that allows the lights to shine through. I'm just going to put a piece in here. I have a slit up one side, and I'm just going to kind of trim it to make sure. I'm going to put a piece on the bottom and a piece on the top.
For me and you. I've longed for this moment to have you for myself in a cabin out of nowhere, just us and no one else. I've decorated.
Now Now that the tray is finally prepped, I'm going to start by putting my sign. I'm attaching it to the top handle here, and this is just some electrical tape that I'm using. You could use whatever tape you wanted to, and I'm just taping it. It perfectly covers up the handle, and I thought it was a great spot for the sign. So I'm just going to tape this on right here, and then I'm going to add my mug. And then once the mug is added, the extra lights are going to be wrapped around this candy cane brush tree that I got from Hobby Lobby last year. And I'm going to wrap the lights around it, and then I'm just going to let you watch me pull this tray the rest of the way together.
Last year I thought about how things can come around just like that if everyone is here to celebrate one day. We have our ups and downs, but when there's love there's always a way. And oh, this time of year we come together to celebrate. Yes, every time the snow is falling down and it is cold outside, we gather around the fireplace, and no one cares about yesterday. My favorite holiday, it means so much more than words can say. And I claim that Christmas is a magic day. Sometimes I tend to forget what glory this holiday represents, but it's fair to say that Christmas is a magic day. This year I'll think about how I'm so lucky to have a place that I can come home to. Yes, I am on my way. We'll put our differences aside and just enjoy this moment of peace and love and happiness. We come together to celebrate. Yes, every time the snow is falling down and it is cold outside, we gather around the fireplace, and no one cares about yesterday. My favorite holiday, it means so much more than words can say. And I claim that Christmas is a magic day. Sometimes I tend to forget what glory this holiday represents, but it's fair to say that Christmas is a magic day. Yes, every time the snow is falling down and it is cold outside, we gather around the fireplace, and no one cares about yesterday. My favorite holiday, it means so much more than words can say.
For this first DIY, I will be making a miniature garland. So I'm going to be taking one of these wooden cutouts from Dollar Tree. It says Mary, and it came in a pack of 5. And then I'm also going to take 4 of the Christmas tree wooden stickers, and I'm going to take the little sticker part off of the trees, flip them over, and go ahead and paint them with 1 coat of Fern Waverly chalk paint on the front as well as on the back. Now, taking a piece of scrapbook paper that I got from Hobby Lobby, I'm going to cut a small piece of this off so that I can cover this word Mary. Then I'm going to take a glue stick and I'm going to put it on the top of the Mary, and then I'm going to stick that down on the paper, and then using my craft knife, I'm going to go ahead and trim around the paper and get it all trimmed out so that the word will show. Now I'm going to take a piece of twine and I'm going to string 6 wooden beads on here. These are 6mm beads, and once I get those onto the twine, then what I'm going to do is take some miniature clothespins and I'm going to hot glue those to the backs of the trees, as well as hot glue 2 of them to the word Merry, and this will be the way that I attach these to the twine. The last step is to go ahead and start spreading out your beads. So you'll start with a bead, then clip a tree, then bead, tree, bead, Merry, bead, tree, bead. I think I may have added an extra tree in there, but you get what I'm saying. And then you end up with a very cute little miniature garland. This second DIY will be our first Christmas vacation inspired DIY. So here I have a printable that I made. One of those was one that I found online, so I will make sure to link both of those down below. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scissors, which apparently Mr. Cheap calls my cheaty scissors, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this circle out. Once I get it cut out, I have this wooden orange slice that was left over from Dollar Tree when they had the wooden stickers for summertime, and I'm just going to take my glue stick and I'm going to glue this little round paper down to the wooden circle. I picked up one of these little craft jars from the Christmas section at Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to take a piece of burlap and go ahead and hot glue this around the center of the jar. I'm not painting the jar, I'm just leaving it as is. And then I'm going to go ahead and hot glue my little wooden circle to the burlap ribbon. I've got this red fabric here that I picked up from Hobby Lobby last year, but they always have it. It's with their everyday fabric that's always 30% off. And I cut just kind of freehanded an oval shape. And what I was going to do was hot glue this to the top of the jar. I tried that first and it didn't work. It just popped right off. So then I'm going to take a piece of twine and go ahead and tie it around there and tie a bow. And then I'm going to go back in and anchor with some hot glue. And then I will go in and just kind of trim the fabric till I get it exactly where I want it to sit and how, long I want it to be. I couldn't leave this little jar of jelly empty, so I picked up these very flashy and shiny Pom Pom Balls from Dollar Tree, and I picked out all the red ones. You guys are going to see these Pom Pom Balls again next week when I do Grinch for Christmas Movie Monday, and I'm just going to put all the red ones in here, and then that will be the finishing touch on this little Jelly of the Month Club DIY. We can't have Christmas vacation without some sort of DIY related to Cousin Eddie. So here I have a little trailer. This came in a 2-pack from Dollar Tree. Now I do know that this isn't exactly what his trailer looks like because he has the kind that you can drive in, but this is what they had, so I'm going to make it work. The first thing that really needed to happen was to try to get off some of the glitter. So I sprayed Goo Gone on it and it actually scraped off pretty easily, and I'm just going to try to get in there and scrape off as much of the glitter as I can on both sides of the trailer. Once the majority of the glitter was removed, I took some Whoville chalk paint in the color Ivory and I painted the trailer with 3 coats of the paint. once I got it all painted with the ivory, I took some pale blue by Folk Art and I started to go ahead and paint the top part of the trailer with the pale blue on both sides. The next part here, all I can call it is random acts of painting. I really don't even know what to say, but I kind of just went back and forth using the Whoville chalk paint in the color Hazelnut. I also used some brown cream wax, and I was just trying to make the trailer look beat up and dirty and, you know, all the things. And then once I got the look, I kind of even went back in with some ivory, did some blending here and there. Like I said, I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of having fun. So once I got it to where I liked how it looked, then I took some of the Arteza black paint and I went ahead and painted the tires. This next DIY is going to turn into a little Dollar Tree sign. So here I've got one of the mini frames. As you can see, I've already kind of broken the sign down, and I'm going to trim this little hat out and use it as a template so that I can cut some fabric. So once I get this off of the page here, I'm going to go ahead and pin it to a piece of fabric that I had in my stash, and then I'm going to cut it out. The hat is all cut out, so now I'm taking this car rag from Dollar Tree and I'm going to cut a small piece of it off, making sure that I have this nice sewn seam here, and I'm going to cut a little piece to put on the front of the hat. And then I'm just going to cut 2 pieces of the seam and kind of off of the rag and then put those on the inside of the ear flaps for the hat. And I'm just going to use hot glue to attach these to the hat. I went ahead and glued the hat to the back of the sign, but before I put the sign together, I want to go ahead and paint this with Whoville white chalk paint. Once that is all painted, then I will put the back of the sign in, and then I will go ahead and cover the back so that it doesn't look all messy like this with just a piece of the brown craft paper from Dollar Tree, and then this DIY is all finished. For this DIY, I'm going to do I guess you can call it a toned down version of the Griswold house. So I picked up these 2 houses from Hobby Lobby. They were on clearance for 30 cents, but Dollar Tree does have these shadow box houses. They also have those smaller ones that have like the little wood plaques on them that I can't ever get off that say like love, gather. So what I did here is I have one of the big houses and then I cut another one in half. And the first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and put some Whoville white chalk paint over it just to kind of use it as like a primer since these were so dark. Once I get a coat of that on there, I'm going to go in with some of this Folk Art paint in the color Sunflower, and I'm going to go ahead and give the house 2 coats of the yellow paint. paint is dry, so to connect these together, I'm just going to use some of this DAP Rapid Fuse. It's kind of like super glue, and I'm just going to glue the two pieces together. And then once that is glued together and it's set up, I'm going to take some Whoville chalk paint in the color Steel, and I'm going to paint the roof. Once the roof was painted, I also added another little chimney to the other side because they had two chimneys, and I just pulled that off the top of the other house. I'm going to go in with a chalk marker because, believe it or not, I do not own any paint pens. So I'm just going to go in and just kind of freehand some windows. Once I get those drawn out, I'm going to take some popsicle sticks and my miter shears, and I'm going to just trim these down to make some shutters. And then to get the shutters a color, I'm just using one of my gray Arteza acrylic markers. To attach the popsicle sticks, I'm just going to use a little bit of hot glue, and then the shutters are down. Once that's finished, I'm going to go ahead and go in with some Whoville chalk paint in the color Truffle, and I'm going to paint both of the chimneys. I wanted to attach a wreath to the door, so this little wreath actually, it's a piece of a wreath from the red door ornament that Dollar Tree has, so I just cut a small piece of that off, and I'm just kind of trying to shape this into a wreath, trimming it down, attaching it. I'll hot glue it to the door, and then the bow that was attached, I'm just going to cut a smaller piece off and make a mini little bow, and then I'll be ready to start wrapping the house with the lights. So I'm using some fairy lights that can sync to music, and here is a little sample of what they can do. I wanted to show you guys these. I don't know that they're necessarily syncing to the music. I think it just runs different patterns, but I had people asking me about them because I did use these same lights in the Buddy the Elf, but this is kind of what they do, just so you have an idea. To wrap the lights, I didn't want to waste having fairy lights sitting on the back of the house, so I'm just going to wrap it going around and around and around. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to secure it to the back with a piece of painter's tape. Then when I pull it down to the front, I'm just going to secure with a piece of tape on the bottom of the house, then pull it back up, secure it to the back, pull it back down, secure it to the bottom, and I'm just going to keep doing that. That way all the lights stay on the front of the house, and it gets way more lights that way. Moving into this Dollar Tree DIY, of course, we have to have the ginormous tree. So this is a tinsel tree from Dollar Tree. Now, I was not a fan of these little green balls on this tree. So I did go through and try to thin some of them out. And then I was like, I can't have a tinsel tree. So how am I going to get this not so shiny? I took it outside and I spray painted it. I used Rust-Oleum's dark green and I just sprayed it down until it wasn't so shiny anymore. And after I was done spray painting, this is what it looked like. So now I'm going to take some multicolored fairy lights. I got these in a 5-pack from Amazon. I will definitely link them down below. They're great little lights. These are the same ones that I used on that little Dollar Tree Christmas barn that I made in a previous video. I'm going to wrap the tree with these lights. And then I wanted a little sign to put sticking out of the tree. So I'm going to take one of these little chalkboard it was one of the chalkboard clips from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to, with the whiteout marker, because again, I don't have any paint pens, but I've shared this hack before that their whiteout pens work great as paint pens. I'm going to write "It's a Beaut, Clark," and then I'm going to glue a little stake to it and then just stick this into the tree so that it sticks out. And then voila, we have a giant tree that doesn't really fit on the tray, but that's the whole point. For the last Dollar Tree DIY, this is another little complimentary piece that could go with this theme. I've got one of these pictures from Dollar Tree. I'm going to break it down and pop off the back, and then I'm going to go ahead and paint the frame with some Waverly ink chalk paint. I only end up having to do one coat on that. While that is drying, I'm going to take one of these little wooden trees from Dollar Tree, and I didn't want the star on it, so I kind of just drew the top of the tree, and then I'm just going to use my hobby knife to cut off the star. To paint my tree, I'm going to use the Waverly chalk paint in the color Fern. I'm only going to paint the front and the sides of the tree, and I'm going to do one coat of paint. While the tree is drying, I'm going to take this piece of scrapbook paper that I got from Hobby Lobby, and this is going to be what I attach to the back of the sign. So I'm just going to trace around the back, cut it out, and then I'll just use a glue stick to attach this to the back of the sign. Now here I've figured out a little trick. I'm taking my heat gun and this metal scraper. I needed the little block off of the llama because I want my tree to stand off of my sign. So I'm just heating up the end of my scraper, and then when I go to push it underneath the block, it just kind of cuts through the glue. And so it didn't take very long to do it that way. That way I wasn't ripping it off. So I'm going to do that. Once that's done, I'm ready to assemble my frame back together. So I'm just going to use some hot glue and pop the back in. Then I will glue the little block down and then glue the tree on top of the block. And then I had this little mini ornament that I'm going to stick down on the tree. And I hauled these a while back on Instagram, and I'm going to take the little bow that was on there and retie it so that I can cover the hole. And then this little sign is all finished. This is the 3-tiered tray that is going to house the rest of my movies. The middle one will be for Christmas Vacation, the top will be Home Alone, and the bottom will be the Grinch. Elf is staying on that white one that I showed you guys in the last Christmas movie Monday. So I'm going to let you guys kind of watch me assemble all of these pieces, and then I've added a few extra things, and I'll tell you where they're from once I get this done. Here is the level of the tray all finished. So the first thing I added to it was on the roof. I used some of my glitter glue to make snow on the roof. Then I took a black pipe cleaner, and because I didn't have an orange one, I added that from the trailer to Cousin Eddie's hand. These mini trees were from Dollar Tree, as well as those brush trees. The little Funko Pop characters are from Amazon, and I will link as much as I can down below. I also made this little ladder out of the wired twine from Dollar Tree. And then as far as the moose mug, that's kind of in the background, I borrowed that from a friend. That is not mine. And then the ornament inside of it is also from Dollar Tree. For the first DIY, we're going to start off super easy. So I knew I wanted to make a little Whoville Village, so I picked up some of these buildings from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to give them a little bit of a makeover. So to do that, I'm going to use a combination of paint as well as paint pens, and I'm just going to go in and add some bright colors to these. No rhyme or reason, just kind of, the dull parts, try to make them a little bit brighter. And then once I get them all painted and brightened up, I'm going to go in with some of the Surebonder glitter glue, and I'm going to go add a little bit of glistening snow to each of the buildings.
Jingle bells ringing in my ear. Jingle bell, a sound that's oh so dear. Frosty the snowman is all around town. Watch out for reindeers are falling down.
Now for the second DIY, we cannot have Whoville without the Whoville Christmas tree. So I'm going to start with one of these foam tree shapes from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to take some of their Garland. I think there's 15 feet on this if I remember right, and I'm just going to hot glue it, and I'm going to start wrapping it around this foam tree, securing it with some hot glue every now and then as I wrap up.
We stay up waiting for Santa tonight. He climbs down the chimney at the speed.
Once the entire foam tree is wrapped, when I get to the top here, I just secure it with some hot glue, and then I just go ahead and coil it onto itself, and I just keep wrapping it up. I use a little bit of hot glue just to kind of make it stick together, but the beauty of this is it naturally just falls over because there's no form for it to hold on to, so this is the perfect Whoville tree. Once that's done, I did take a piece of wire and secure where the springy part of the tree, or I don't even know what to call it, the piece of the tree that's not secured to the foam tree, that part, and kind of anchor it to a piece of the garland that's actually attached to the foam tree. And then voila, you've got yourself a bent over Whoville tree. I would just say just use some hot glue, secure it here and there, but yeah, it just naturally falls to the side, which is just perfect. Now it's time to decorate the tree, so I'm going to take some of these multicolored fairy lights. I know it seems like it's an endless pack of these fairy lights, but they were all in that same pack. I will definitely link everything I can down below in the description box. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap the tree first with these fairy lights. And then once that's done, I'm going to take some of those fancy Pom Pom Balls with the glittery little tinsel pieces mixed in, and I'm just going to hot glue those all over the tree.
While we're dancing around the Christmas tree, hugging and kissing, just you and me. Carolers are singing outside our door, lovely songs we all heard before, as they walk from house to house to wish us.
This next DIY is essentially free. I felt like my village still needed one more thing, and I wanted to make the Grinch's lair. So I had a box laying around, and I just cut 3 kind of willy-nilly shapes, no rhyme or reason to them. Then I just crinkled them up and tried to make them look more like a mountain. The cardboard is the best thing you can do if you ever need to make a mountain DIY, by the way. And once I did that, I took a brown marker and I just wanted to define the edges of these 3 different pieces. So I went along the edges and just colored it in with this brown marker. Once that was done, I hot glued all 3 of the pieces together. And then from there, I made a little stand because I wanted it to stand up. So I took 4 tower blocks and I just glued them all together. And then I hot glued it to the back of my little mountain here. And then once that was done, here's the printable. All of the projects I did is I put them all on one printable to make it easy for you. So I'm just going to cut out the one that says Grinch's lair, and I'm going to glue stick that to the largest piece of this. And then once that was done, I went in with some glitter glue because I seem to be pretty obsessed with this stuff. It's the same one I used on the village for the Whoville. And I just kind of randomly blobbed it all over the edges and put a couple splotches here and there. If you have the white glue sticks, you certainly could do white snow or puff paint, whatever you want to do to get the snow. But then I was like, it still needs a little something more. So I found some of that fake snow spray from Dollar Tree, and I just spritzed it all over it, and then it was finished. Now I have my Grinch's lair and all the components I felt like I needed for the Whoville Village.
Merry Christmas Day.
For the next Dollar Tree DIY, I am super excited. So I picked up this sign a long time ago, and when I saw it, I knew I'd be making this project with it. Now, if you can't find it, no big deal. They have the trucks you can pick up. You can pick up an arrow from the crafter's square. You could just use popsicle sticks. You could definitely get different components together to get this same look. The first thing you need to do is just go ahead and, if you do have this sign, remove the truck and the arrow from the sign, and then I'm just going to take some Goo Gone, spray it on the glitter, and scrape it off. Now it's time to go ahead and just paint the sign. So pretty much everywhere that it's red is going to stay red. And then for the window where the pumpkins kind of overlap that part, I'm going to end up using some silver lining chalk paint by Whoville. The red is just the crimson from Whoville. And then I'm also going to put the silver lining on the bumper. And then for the tires, I will end up using the ink, which is also black, from Whoville.
Under the mistletoe, while Santa's busy saying ho ho ho, we're feeling jolly, eating Christmas cake, and then we go skating on the frozen lake, saying hi to every friendly face.
And to paint the arrow, I'm going to use some of this folk art in the color citrus green, which was the perfect Grinch color.
And later we warm up by the fireplace.
Then for the truck, I am going to go in and do a little bit of detail work. So around the bumper, I'm going to use some of the steel Whoville chalk paint and just kind of outline it and then do the little line down the middle of the bumper. I'm also going to use this to put some dots on the bumper. And then I'm going to use just a black Sharpie paint pen to outline the different elements on the truck. And then a white Sharpie to go around the brake lights. Now we are ready to get our words onto our sign. So I'm not going to use my Cricut. I made a free printable. It will be linked down below. And if you are new to my videos, I always have anything that I can link down in the description box that you might see in a video. So check down there if there's something specific. Now the free printable will be there. It says Merry Grinchmas, as well as has the little silhouette heads that you'll need. This is transfer paper. I had it on hand. You certainly don't have to use transfer paper. You can do the old school route, and all you have to do for that is just take a pencil, scribble on the back of the paper, then flip it over, trace over it, and you'll get your pencil lines on there just as easily. So I'm going to trace over the Merry Grinchmas. I'm going to end up using a white paint pen to fill this in. I will also transfer over the little silhouette of the Grinch's head and Max's head, and then I'm going to use my black Sharpie paint pen for that one. The Grinch, of course, has to be stealing some presents. So these are just the little Dollar Tree present stickers. And I'm going to end up using 7 of these. I'm going to use my paint pens to go ahead and fill these in. And I'm just going to make them all kinds of wonky Whoville colors. Getting down to finishing up this DIY. So now all I have to do is just hot glue all the little presents to the back of the truck. Once that's done, for the green arrow, I wanted to write Whoville, and I just freehanded it. I wrote with pencil and used my black Sharpie. Once that's done, then I'm gonna go ahead and get my little Dollar Tree tin bucket ready. I'm gonna put the sign in here. So I'm going to put a piece of floral foam in there so that I can stick the stake in there. And then the truck and the arrow just need to be glued back onto the black stake. And then I'm going to take some green ribbon that I had and go ahead and just wrap it around the burlap twine, because I felt like it was just a little too rusticy looking on the actual metal tin, so that kind of added a Grinch element to it. And then for the inside of it, I'm going to put some fairy lights, and then I just have this cotton fluff that I'm going to put in there along with some of the little white pom-poms. I'm not 100% sold on the white fluff. So let me know down in the comments, do you think I should leave the white fluff? Should I maybe do some colorful presents in there or ornaments instead? I don't know. I'm not quite sold yet, but there you go. That's the end of this project. It's all finished. This next DIY is one of those, it's not really a DIY, but it's kind of a DIY. So I got this sleigh from Dollar Tree. I'm just going to untwist the greenery here. There are two little holes there, and it's just twisted in. I'll put it aside and save it later. Then I wanted to save the twine there because that's going to be the reins for Max. So I'm going to take my tin snips and just cut off this little metal piece on the back of the sleigh. Then I'll get the twine positioned at the front of the sleigh by kind of looping it through there and around Max's neck. And then to fill the sleigh, I've got these super colorful little miniature presents that came from Walmart a long time ago. And I'm just going to hot glue them and stack them up as high as I can. And then I'll probably also go back in and throw in a few Christmas trees to represent all the goodies that the Grinch stole. Of course, now we need to go ahead and make a sign. So this is just one of the little Dollar Tree wall arts. I'm going to take off the hanging piece. I always save those. And then I'm going to pop off the back. Then once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and pop off the little 3D element to this. And then it left my sign pink. Now, instead of painting this or flipping it over or doing all that, I decided to go ahead and cut a piece of white cardstock. And then I just have a free printable that is sized for this size sign. Again, it will be linked down below in the description box. And the cardstock is just going to kind of act as a buffer so that when I put my white printer paper on the back, the pink doesn't show through. So I'll just attach my printable to the white cardstock, and then I'll just glue that onto the back of the sign. And I'm just going to use a glue stick to do that. And voila, another very easy, simple DIY. These are probably the only item that I'm using that are not from Dollar Tree, but you certainly could get mugs from Dollar Tree. These are smaller little espresso type mugs. And now we're going kind of grumpy Christmas here and a little bit of complimentary decor. So here I made some stickers with my Cricut, and they're just going to say Grinch and then stink, stank, stunk. And then I've got one that says Scrooge and one that says Bah Humbug. And I'm just going to apply these vinyl stickers. Now, you certainly can wash these. If you didn't know, when you apply vinyl to something, you definitely just want to hand wash it. You do not want to run it through the dishwasher. But I'm going to be using these just for decor purposes. But there you go. Another simple, easy DIY. What makes this DIY really awesome, other than the fact that it's super easy to do, is that it's multi-seasonal. So you can use it for this Christmas or you can use it for Valentine's Day. So this is just one of the wooden hearts from the Crafter's Square. I'm going in with one coat of the Crimson Waverly chalk paint. Once that's painted, I have some of the felt balls. You guys know I've kind of been obsessed with those this season. I got them on Amazon. I will definitely, like I said, have everything linked down below. I put 10 felt balls on a piece of twine, and then I just made a tassel on one end because, you know, the Grinch's heart grew 3 sizes. So I felt like this was a great little piece to kind of add to the tray. And then again, you can whip it out for Valentine's Day. last Dollar Tree DIY, we're going to be using some of these silver napkin rings and some green felt. This was actually a DIY that I did last year that I thought would be perfect for this Grinch theme DIY. Here I have a printout of the Grinch's hand. It didn't print out so well because I just changed the ink. Now you could use that as a template and go ahead and cut around the actual template. I'm just freehanding it by looking at the hand, and then I'm going to cut that out with a pair of scissors. Once that is all cut out, I had some of this red tinsel left over from one of the tinsel-y things from Dollar Tree, and I just hot glued it down. And then I've got some white fluff here to go ahead and hot glue down for the, I guess not the collar, but the sleeve. I don't even know what I'm saying. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. So you're going to glue that white part down to his hand. And then once that's done, you're going to need a piece of paper. And this is where you're going to write whoever's name, because you're making a little like place setting. And then you're going to need one of the clear ornaments from Dollar Tree. So I'm just using the string that it comes with, and I'm just going to glue a piece of it to one of the fingers and then glue the other piece to the other finger. And the easy thing about this is then all you have to do is just pull the ornament part off from the little silver cap, and then just take your piece of paper with the name, just roll up the paper, use some tweezers, get it positioned in there, and then here you have a little really cute name place setting in the Grinch theme. Now let's get to decorating this tray. So here's my 3-tiered tray. If you've missed the other 2 Christmas movie videos, this tray came from Kirkland's. It was on clearance for really cheap. I can't remember exactly how much, but I know it was super cheap 2 years ago, I think. So the bottom tray, this is the Grinch. The middle tray I've already done. It's Christmas Vacation. We'll end up there. And then the top one will be Home Alone, which is the next Christmas movie Monday. So this batting just came from Hobby Lobby. I like it because it's thin and it's also kind of stretchy, so you can kind of pull it and stretch it out. I'm just going to trim around it, and then I had a strand of snowflake lights that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I thought I would just put those underneath. I'm not going to tape these down like I did for the elf one because the wires weren't as willy-nilly as those. So I'm just going to kind of place them under here, and then I'm going to start putting stuff on the tray. And as things that are not DIYs, I'll come back on and tell you where I got them. These little white trees came in a pack of 4 from Walmart a while back. And when I was putting the village here, I realized that I needed to get my Whoville tree in there. And it was right where I needed, where that last building that I just took off was. So I put it in there, but my tree was such a great floppy tree that I was having issues getting it to stay. So what I ended up doing to make it stay in place is I just took a piece of painter's tape and I just taped a few pieces of the strands of garland to the bottom of the tray, and then it was fine. It stayed in place and it was good to go. And then the other little trees that you'll see me put, the little multicolored ones, those came from Hobby Lobby. the little Whoville figure guide that I just put there. It came in a huge pack. Well, I say it's a huge pack, but it came in a pack from Walmart a while back. It had like the Whoville Tree, Cindy Lou, Max, the Grinch, 2 characters. And then these pop figures, the Grinch pop figure on top of the building, Max, and then the bigger one, Cindy Lou. Those were pop figures, and I just got those on Amazon. Now, after I started putting these together, I realized I couldn't really get my sign to fit in the tray. I'm sure I could if I went back and kind of reworked it, but I didn't like how it was kind of covering up my Whoville back there. So it'll probably just sit next to this when I do put this tray up. But that is everything that I purchased from other places on this tray. Let's get into the first Home Alone DIY. So I picked up this little doll bed from Dollar Tree, and the first thing I wanted to do was make a little pillow for it. So I just cut a piece of white fabric, and then I'm just going to take some hot glue and glue 2 of the sides together. And then once I do that, I'm just going to take some stuffing and go ahead and stuff it inside. And then to seal it off, I'm just going to just hot glue the ends and then just kind of smush it with my fingers and cut off the extra. And then to make sure the pillow is nice and secure, I'm going to hot glue the pillow to the bed.
To have a place that I can come home to. Yes, I am on my way.
Now I'm going to make a couple of the different food elements to go along with the movie. So Kevin jumped on the bed and he was eating popcorn. So I didn't show this on camera, but I ended up just printing off a little picture of popcorn. It's included on the printable down below. And I just attach it to a piece of cardstock as well as a Pepsi can because, you know, Fuller drinks the Pepsi. But right now I'm making a little Nero's pizza box and I really was just winging it. I didn't know what I was doing here, so I kind of did this long side and then I was like, oh great, it doesn't have sides. So I basically just pieced it together. I folded this part up and then I just took a small strip to kind of finish off the sides. And then once that was done, I took a marker and I went ahead and drew in a pizza inside of the box. And then the last step was to get the little Nero's logo on the top of the box. I found a free printable on Pinterest and of the logo, and so it's down below on the printable as well. And I just cut that out and glued that to the top of the pizza box. And then that's it. That's everything that's going to be on the bed. I've got the pizza box. There's going to be a Pepsi can and a little popcorn container. For this DIY, I wanted to do something that represented the wet bandits. So here I've got one of these little wooden signs from Dollar Tree, and this is just a van coloring page. I just Googled van coloring page. I will try my hardest to find the same one. I thought I'd save the link, but I didn't. So I will do my best, but literally that's what I Googled, van coloring page. And I'm going to use some transfer paper to get this image outline transferred over to my wood. Now, you do not have to do it this route. You can pencil in the back if you want to, and just scratch the back of it with a pencil and then flip it over and go ahead and trace it that way. But I just needed to get the outline down onto the wood. Once that was done, I'm going to go in with my scorch marker and I'm going to outline the van wherever I have lines. Go ahead and fill that in. Now, for the scorch marker, the more liquid that comes out, the darker potential you have for the burn. So if it's not really heavy loaded and you go down to dab and it's more kind of a dry, it's going to be a light burn. But if you really get the liquid out, it will have the potential to be super dark. And I'm just going to outline it. And then I started with my small heat gun doing it, and I realized it wasn't getting hot enough and I needed to use my big honker heat gun. So I busted that one out, and then I went over the whole image until I got it looking the way I wanted it to. Once the van was burned on there, I felt like the edge just needed to be defined a little bit, so I took my scorch marker and outlined the edge and just did a light burn. And then the holes where the twine was connected, I wanted to fill those in, so I had these two buttons. They were left over from the 2020 ornament I made, and they were kind of neutral tones, so I just stuck those on there, and I felt like they kind of fit in with the colors. And then I knew I needed to put the word Wet Bandits on the sign. Originally I was going to wood burn it, but then I decided to go ahead and stamp it. These stamps came from Tuesday morning, I believe, and I was going to first try to get them all nice and straight and pretty. That didn't turn out, and so I just kind of rolled with it and made the letters kind of all wonky. And I can't believe I'm even going to admit this, but I pulled all the stamps out, and I was like, I need the T for bandits. And I looked, I'm not even kidding, for 10 good minutes, I looked for the T and then realized that the T was with the word wet. So anyway, don't do that if you lay out stamps like I do. Just make sure you realize that you had all the letters from the get-go. And then once that was done, I needed to do something to the van. And I didn't want to, color it in with the marker, bright blue. I didn't want it a harsh paint job, but I didn't want to leave it white. So I took some baby blue paint by Deco Art and added some water. And then I just went in very, very lightly to kind of give it a watercolor feel. And I love how it turned out. It wasn't too harsh, but it was a little pop of the blue. And then, of course, if you wanted to, you could go in and if you Google like Home Alone or Wet Bandit Van, it tells you the name of the company they had on there. I can't think of it at the moment. But you could go as that far and go ahead and logo out the van if you wanted to. But I just left it like this, and I think it turned out great. For this DIY, I'm going to be doing my recreation of the Home Alone house. So the first thing I need to do is remove the labels from the back of the houses. Two of these were from Dollar Tree, the ones that had like love and gather. The other one was a Hobby Lobby find. You could use any of the Dollar Tree houses for this. Then I took some Goo Gone and rubbed that wherever the sticky was to kind of get that off. Once that was done, I went in with some brick red paint by Deco Art. Now, on the two Dollar Tree houses, you'll notice they are not pointy. I did take them out to my miter saw and just chop off because if you look at a picture of the Home Alone house, it doesn't have pointy points in the front. And honestly, I should have done that to the middle one too, but it had the chimney attached, so I just kind of left that one as is. Like I said, this is my interpretation of the house. It took 2 coats of this brick red to get it all covered, and then for the roof, I just did the Waverly ink chalk paint, and it only took 1 coat of that. Once the houses were dry, I just took some hot glue and I glued the pieces together. And then when that was finished, I just took a little bit more of the red paint and I just touched up where it needed to be touched up. And then I had these 2 little pieces of Village from Dollar Tree. I didn't have the little statue that the pizza guy kept knocking over every time, and I didn't feel like trying to recreate that. So this is kind of what I'm using in place of the statue. But I'm just going to start drawing the details, and I'm just going to use paint pens. So I drew on the door with the black paint pen. I drew on trim and the windows with the white paint pen. I made shutters with popsicle sticks, and I just, instead of painting them, I just used my acrylic Arteza marker to just fill those in. And I'm just going to start kind of getting all the details down onto the house.
Yes, every time the snow is falling down and it is cold outside, we gather around the fireplace and no one cares about yesterday. My favorite holiday, it means so much more than words can say. And I claim Christmas is a magic day.
All of the details to the house are added. Now, what you can't tell is in that bottom left window, maybe you can, I drew in the little black shadows of when he's having the little fake party to try to scare off Marv and Harry. Now, this is where I made a mistake because this was an afterthought on my part. So if you want your windows to be yellow, don't do this. I originally started and I thought, okay, I want my windows yellow. I'm going to use a yellow paint pen because then I can have control and I won't have to redo all the white. It was way too bright, so I took some of that sunflower yellow and I just went in with a paintbrush, and I was trying to be super careful at first, but then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and just paint over the whole window, and I'll go back in and redraw the white lines. So if you think you're going to want to color in your windows, make sure you do that first before you go in with all the white details. But I'm going to go ahead and paint these, and I just did 1 coat. I just wanted it to be very, very light. And then I, of course, had to go back in with my white paint pen and go back and define all the lines. And of course, the house needed some snow, so I took some of the white glue sticks that I used in my last video, and I just sprinkled Epsom salt and just kind of put it around at the base of the house as well. It's just kind of spotty all over the roof of the house. And there we go. The Home Alone house is all done. You could add lights to this if you wanted to. They had white lights on their house, so you could definitely add some white fairy lights if you'd like. But there you go. That's my replica of the Home Alone house.
Sunny day, but it's cold outside. It tingles in my heart. Breathing air that clears my mind. I'm all for a good start.
This DIY is super easy. We're going to be making a little sign with this printable that says Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. And here I've got a wall art from Dollar Tree, so I'm just going to break this down. Once that's done, I'm going to take a piece of cardstock. Instead of painting the wall art, the back of it, I'm just going to use cardstock. That'll help the Merry Christmas kind of have a thicker back to it. So I'm just going to trace the piece of cardstock around the back and then just cut that out. Once that's done, I'm going to take a glue stick and I am going to glue down the cardstock to the back of the wall art. And then from there, I'll just trim out my little Merry Christmas printable, and I will attach that to the cardstock with some glue, glue stick, not hot glue. And then from there, I'll just pop it into the frame. I actually didn't have to hot glue this back in there. It popped back in pretty snugly, so I just left it like that. And there you go, a little sign. Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
It feels like I'm a kid, like I'm forever young. that's why I wanna sing about the Christmas on its way.
Since we just did a super easy sign, we're about to do an even easier sign. So here I found this free printable online. I will have it linked down below. And I've got a Dollar Tree 5x7 frame. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything out, including the glass, because I don't really like the shiny, glossy look of the glass. I'm going to trim down my printable, stick it back in the frame, and that's it. It's done. Super easy. This is probably the easiest DIY in this batch, but it's a super cute sign. And I will say this, the printable, the website that this printable came from, the lady also has one for Elf. She had one for, I believe, Christmas Vacation and Scrooge. And so you could definitely, if you wanted to make it and send it to like Walgreens or do like an 11x14 print or do a larger version of this, you certainly could do that. But there you go. Super easy DIY. For this DIY, I'm going to be making over this clearance find from Hobby Lobby. It's just a little wooden bead strand. So the first thing I wanted to do was to paint the wood medallion, and I thought to myself, oh, I could paint this with everything still attached. So that's what I started to do. I started to paint it with the Whoville white chalk paint, and then once I started doing it, I was like, I need to take it apart. So I took it apart and I painted the entire little wood medallion. And then once that was done, I decided that I wanted to paint some of the beads a color. So I took the fern green Whoville chalk paint and I just strung these up on a skewer and just kind of jabbed it into 2 pieces of floral foam. And I just kind of willy-nilly brushed it all over the place. I wasn't trying to get them super full coverage, but I wanted every other bead to be green. So I left the darker beads, those colors, and I pulled off the lighter ones and used those to paint the green color. And then once that was done, I assembled it back together. And then I took the little Home Alone house and I just did the old school way where you pencil on the back and then you flip it over and traced it. And then I did use my paint markers to fill in the house, and it worked out fine. The yellow was a good color, the red was a good color, so it worked out great. And then this little farmhouse bead is all finished.
My winter wonderland. I'm walking around making small talk with people that pass me by. I share a laugh, it gives me joy that everyone's having a good time.
And here is how the beads turned out. Now, before I decorate the tray, this very last DIY, I'm going to revisit one that I made back in July because I felt like it fit the perfect theme of Home Alone, about being home for Christmas. So let's get into this last DIY. For this last DIY, I'm going to be making over this old suitcase. And on one of the sides, I'm going to paint the buffalo check pattern. So the first thing I'm going to do is use this Farmhouse Red by Chalked, and I'm going to paint one really good coat on this side of the suitcase.
It feels like I'm a kid, like I'm forever young. And that's why I want to sing about the Christmas on its way.
Once that is dry, you're going to take some painter's tape and you're going to tape off some stripes using painter's tape as your spacing in between each stripe. Then take the red that you just painted, which I used the Farmhouse Red, and you want to make it darker. So I thought I was putting in black. I'm using the charcoal by Chalked as well, but it actually was a super dark gray, and that's fine. It worked fine, but I would recommend just going ahead and using black if you have it. And what you're doing is you're making your darkest shade right now. And then what you're going to do is just take this shade and you will paint the stripes that you just marked off.
Hang around and celebrate this day. Everyone's smiling and it's snowing. It's the time of year again. I'm happy you're here.
Now now we're going to peel off the tape, and then we're going to mark horizontally, doing the same thing with some painter's tape and using a piece of painter's tape as our spacer. And what I did was I took the darkest color and I added a little bit of more of the original red to it. You want a medium tone here. And then once you get this taped off, you're going to paint your medium tone red.
No, it's the time of year, winter wonderland. My winter wonderland. It's the time of year, my winter wonderland, my winter wonderland. I wanna sing about the Christmas on its way.
And here you can see the 3 shades of red I used. That top one was my medium tone, the middle here was the darkest, and then this one, the bottom one, was my farmhouse red that I used in the beginning. And now what you're going to do is you're going to go back and tape off your original lines. You're going to leave the horizontal that you have here. Don't peel those off. Go back with these painter's tape and do the vertical lines again. And then this is where you would use your black paint to paint your stripes. And in my case, I'm using the dark gray, which worked out just as fine. And you're going to go in with that dark color, and then you can peel it all off, and you'll have a buffalo check pattern.
And it's snowing, it's the time of year again. I'm happy you're here, my winter wonderland. Oh, my winter wonderland. Oh, my
Now that that's all painted, I'm just going to tape off this area, and I'm going to paint the rest of my suitcase the charcoal gray, except for the leather handle. I left that because I thought that was really cool. And one thing that was neat about the suitcase is it still had a Pan Am luggage tag on it when I found it from the curb. I just thought that was really neat. And once it gets all painted, then my last step is to go ahead and add a decal that I designed in Cricut Design Space. It just says, "I'll be home for Christmas." And I'm going to go ahead and I just cut it out with permanent vinyl, and I'm going to apply it to the side of my suitcase. And then the last thing that I wanted to do was to add some sort of luggage tag to this. So I have one of these little Dollar Tree tags, and I just created a little luggage tag here. It has HOU, which is for Houston because that's where I'm at. And I just left the pretty side of it, I guess, the Christmas side. I left it as is because I thought, well, if the tag accidentally flips over, there'll be a Christmas decor on it. And then I just went ahead and put my little printable on the back. And then this suitcase is all finished. And we are now ready to get into decorating our tray.
Making our Christmas memories. I've been working so much lately, I can barely find the time to sleep. Yeah, spend my time.
Now let's get this tray all decorated. So for the top tray, I'm going to have Kevin kind of be the focal point. So I will put the printable that I made. Again, it will be linked down below. Then I'm going to put the bed up here with all of the little accessories that I made for it. These little red and green wooden houses, they were a Goodwill find, and they have layers and layers of paint on them. They were yellow and pink, and now they're green and red. Those little small mini trees were from Dollar Tree. That sleigh is a Dollar Tree ornament that I just ripped off the stuff on it and painted it red. The bottle brush tree was a 3-pack from Hobby Lobby, the green one. And then this was an ornament that is a glass, so kind of be careful of that if you do find this one. But I had the candy canes to represent the rubbish he eats, and it was just in the candy section at Hobby Lobby. And then, of course, the Kevin figure was from Amazon, along with the little pizza thing I made. And then there's the popcorn and the Pepsi can. And there we go. Kevin is all represented on this top tray. And then I decide kind of last minute to throw in a little white tree to kind of have red, green, and white in the back. That white tree was from Dollar Tree. Now for the second tray, the focal point is going to be the house. So I'm going to start with some of this thin batting to kind of have a snowy feel at the bottom. I'm not going to put any lights or anything under it. In the end, I do end up adding Jingle Bell fairy lights from Dollar Tree, so you'll see that in the end shot. But I'm going to put the house in there, and then after that I've got 2 more of the little bottle brush trees. Again, those are from Hobby Lobby. And then I'm going to put the little figure in there. He's from Amazon. And then the little mini trees again from Dollar Tree. And then once that's done, this is kind of, like I said, this was kind of simple. The fairy lights we'll add in a minute because that was kind of a lot of white space. And then on the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more of the batting for the snow. Again, it was all from that same bag, and I still have plenty of it to use. So if you're looking for batting, go to Hobby Lobby. And then here I have my little sign. It wouldn't stand up very well, so I do end up putting a little tree behind it that you don't end up seeing, but it's, you know, I just something behind it to keep it from falling over. So I do that. And then of course the beads will go down. And then we've got another figure again from Amazon. And then the large white house, that was from Target quite a few years ago. And then the Wet Bandit sign that I made. And then again, just adding in some trees. The bright colored presents that I added in were from Dollar Tree. And there we go. The tray is all decorated.
People, please, but this is my favorite holiday. It's a chance to start over new, 'cause I missed you, so I'm letting go of everything but you. These are the good times with you. Baby, this year it's just gonna be you and me. Hang by the fire and chill. Isn't this how it's supposed to be? Making our Christmas memories. Oh, and I've been longing to hold you close. Forget about everyone else. Isn't this how it's supposed to be? Making our Christmas memories. Oh, oh.
For the first DIY, we're going to start off really easy and make a Christmas story inspired ornament. So here I have a wood round that came from a huge pack from Arteza. I will definitely link those down below. And I'm just going to turn this into an ornament. I have this little vinyl decal that I created on my Cricut. And all it says is I, and then there's 3 dogs dare you, which means I triple dog dare you. And all I'm going to do is just set this down on here. And then once it gets on top, you can add anything you want. If you want to add a bow to it, you could add some greenery to it. I'm just going to go kind of simple and plain Jane here and just attach the vinyl sticker. Take some red and white baker's twine and go ahead and tie it up. You could also do a larger version of this and make it into a really cute little sign. For the next DIY, this is a Dollar Tree DIY and just kind of a little random sign that you could put on a tray, you could put on a bookshelf, you could put in a tier tray, whatever you want to do. So here I've got one of the little wooden ornaments from Dollar Tree, which my sweet friend Jennifer from Little Bit of Common Crazy gave me some of these because I could never find them. I'm just painting it with some crimson red chalk paint. And while that is drying, I'm going to start working on a little bit of a fabric garland. So here I've got some fabric. These came in a big like jelly roll type thing from Walmart. And I'm just going to cut these strips down with my pinking shears and make real thin strips. And then I've got about a strip that's about, I don't know, 6 inches. And I'm just going to take it, fold it in half, and then put the loop on the twine, pull the little tails through, and that's how it attaches to the twine. And then I'm going to go ahead and just make those a little bit thinner by trimming each one of those in half with my pinking shears. I end up doing just 4. I don't need very many because this is just going to hang at the top of my ornament. And so I'm just going to make them and then I'll go ahead and just kind of squish them together on the twine. once my little fabric tassel garland was ready to go, I've got one of these wide erase little easel stands from Dollar Tree. If they have the chalkboard ones too, so this could work on the chalkboard as well. Either one will work. And what I'm going to do is first I'm going to take this red ornament and I'm just going to hot glue it to the center of this sign. And then once that's hot glued down, I'm going to go ahead and take my little fabric garland and hot glue that on top of the ornament. I do end up trimming that a little bit because I don't want it super long and dangly on the ornament. And then once that's glued down, you know, gotta have a little twine bow. So I added some twine bow here. Again, you could add greenery to this. You could put bells on it. Any kind of embellishment you want is totally fine. And then the last step after I got my little ornament all assembled here is I wanted to add some buffalo check ribbon just to kind of define this a little more. And so I just took some of this ribbon that I got from Hobby Lobby quite a while ago, and I'm just going to glue a strip of it at the top as well as at the bottom of the little sign, and then this thing is all finished. And what's nice about it is there's still room that you could write on it if you wanted to above and below the ornament. This next DIY is a Dollar Tree DIY. So here I have 3 books that I got quite a while ago from the Dollar Tree. And back then I had painted them with some white Waverly chalk paint, thought I was going to use them and then never did. So I pulled them back out. And now what I'm going to do is go ahead and stamp on the binding or on the side of the book here a Christmas story. I just thought that was kind of fun because it's got the word story in it and these are books. So I'm going to go through and stamp these. Now, anytime I stamp on books, it is a little rough. I'm not going to lie, but I'm okay with that. And you can go back in. As you can tell here, I've got a nice black line above the A and it's not very dark. I do end up going back and kind of fixing this A after a while, but when you stamp, if you happen to get lines, you can go in and just paint over that or leave it. It's up to you what you want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and go through and just stamp all my letters down, and I'm just using plain black ink. These stamps came from Michael's quite a while ago, but they always have them. It's just kind of a generic stamp that they always have. And here you can see I went ahead and kind of moved the A off the edge. However you want to stamp it is up to you. And then I'm just going to take some of this buffalo check ribbon that came from Hobby Lobby. I've just had it in my stash, and I'm going to tie it off to one end and go ahead and tie that into a bow. And then once that's done, I found these cute little glasses in the dolls section at Hobby Lobby. It's where the build your own dollhouse and the doll furniture and all that stuff was. So I got those and used my 40% off coupon. And so what I wanted to do is just make sure that I got the lens looking like it was cracked. So I just took a Sharpie marker and used it. If I had had a fine tip paint pen, I probably would have used that instead. But a Sharpie marker, a paint pen, or even just a paint brush and some paint would work. And I'm just going to kind of jagged it up and make it look like it's all cracked. The books were pretty white, and I kind of wanted them just to look a little more roughed up. So I took the buffalo check ribbon off, and then I just took a makeup sponge from Dollar Tree and some of the black ink, and I just went around all the edges of the books just to kind of darken them up just a little bit. And then once that was done, I was ready to go ahead and put my buffalo check bow back on here. And then I just kind of wanted to show you, you could add a pop of red by using one of those ornaments. But I ended up finding a really cute sign at Hobby Lobby that I'm going to put on there. And then it's just a matter of pulling this whole thing together. You could add greenery, you could add bells, whatever little embellishments you want to add to the stack of books would be super cute. All right, before we get into the leg lamp DIY, let's get into making the little shipping crate. So for this one, all you need are some popsicle sticks from Dollar Tree as well as some wood planks. So you're going to need 16 popsicle sticks, and what I'm going to do is take my miter shears and I'm just going to cut off the rounded end. We're going to make the 4 sides of our crate. So each side will have 4 popsicle sticks side by side, kind of longer. And then I'm going to trim 2 smaller ones to put towards the bottom of each side and towards the top. And I'm just going to use some hot glue to attach those to the sides. Once all 4 of my sides are ready to go, I'm going to take that wood plank and I'm just going to cut a base and a top for my crate. And then I'm just going to start assembling it. So I'll just go ahead and use some hot glue to assemble my 4 sides. And then once that's done, I'm ready to go ahead and make the little fragile sign, or a fragile. You could write fragile if you wanted to. I just went ahead and wrote fragile as well as this end up. And I'm just using a Sharpie marker to do that. You could use a paint pen, whatever you want to use. And then I'm also going to end up putting some little bundles of raffia at the top of the crate before I put the lid on top to kind of just show the little packing material. And that's it. This is super easy to do. And here's the finished product. And now to the leg lamp DIY. I'm going to start by saying my original plan was to go get a Barbie doll and decapitate it and pull off its leg and use a Barbie leg and then build the lamp around that. But the Barbie legs, as I was looking at them, were a little smaller than what I really wanted. And then I was like, well, I could get one of like the fake American Girl dolls, but that was even worse. I mean, while it was a bigger leg, it was not quite the sexy leg that the lamp is. So then I was like, well, I could take clay and I could sculpt the leg. And then I realized, who am I kidding? I'm not a sculptor. I don't know how to work with clay. So now we are to this, which is taking a Dollar Tree wood plank, and I am just sketching out what I think is a sexy leg. And there we go. That's what it looks like. The knee is a little big, but that's okay. I do fix it. Anyway, so it's sketched out. Then what I'm going to do is I need to cut it out. So I very painstakingly, cut it out with my hobby knives, X-Acto knife combination. You certainly could just leave it sketched on here if you didn't, but I really wanted it to sort of be like the lamp. So yeah, that's kind of, in the end, that's what I did. To get the leg. You could paper mache if you enjoy that. Those type things are just not quite in my repertoire of crafting. So this is what we're stuck with, is just a bunch of wood whittling. And you know what? It's fine. I just had on Hallmark movies. It really went by pretty quickly. Once you're done woodworking, you are going to want to go ahead and just give it a light sanding. I was actually pleasantly surprised with how it turned out. The knee is still a little, I don't know, but once you put the fishnets on there, you don't even notice it. So I got that sanded, and then what I'm going to do is work on the fishnets, which is just some black tulle from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just going to use some hot glue, and I end up wrapping it around twice because one time you can't really see it very well, so I just wrap it around twice as close to the bottom as I can get. And then for the shoe, you'll see that little black felt square there. I just kind of trace around and just cut out a little black high-heeled shoe with the felt, again attaching it with some hot glue. For the lampshade, I picked up this mini lampshade from Hobby Lobby. It was on sale, so I got it for $2. And this yellow fabric also came from Hobby Lobby. I'm just going to first wrap it around the sides, hot gluing it as I go, and then just tuck in the top and tuck in the bottom. I also added some black fringe around the bottom, which I forgot to film, but the black fringe also came from Hobby Lobby, and I just used hot glue for that. Now, I needed to have something that would help stabilize my lamp, so here I have a long dowel rod from Dollar Tree. And the first thing I'm going to do is take a Sharpie marker. You could use a black paint pen or just even regular paint, and I'm just going to kind of fill in the bottom. The reason I'm doing this is I'm going to be hot gluing my leg to this dowel rod, and this little black part is going to go right behind the heel, and it will kind of just blend in and not stand out so obvious as if I were to put the dowel rod kind of right there in the opening of the shoe. So once that's all colored in, I'm going to just hot glue my leg to the dowel rod, and then I'm going to take my lampshade and hot glue that to the top of the dowel rod. And I'm just going to go in there with a whole bunch of hot glue and get it all secure. For the base, I'm going to be using one of these wood ornaments from Dollar Tree. I'm just going to take a little bit of spackling here and just fill in that hole. Then I will take some of the Whoville ink chalk paint, also known as black, and go ahead and paint this after I gave it a very light sanding because the edges are a little rough on these wood pieces. Then it's time to assemble my lamp. But before I do that, here I have another little piece of dowel rod that I'm just using a Sharpie marker. This is just going to be some little extra reinforcement that I put down to help hold my lamp up. So all I'm going to do this is I'm going to use some DAP, which is kind of like super glue. It's quick drying, it's permanent, and I'm going to put it on the heel of the shoe as well as kind of the base of the shoe, and I'm just going to hold it there for a minute. And then once that's done, I have some black glue sticks, and so I just went in with a little bit of the black hot glue and kind of went around the heel of the shoe as well as behind the shoe, and it just kind of blends in. It makes it not so obvious that I'm hot gluing it. And then once that was done, I took that little dowel piece that I used with the Sharpie marker on, and I put that behind the shoe and just attached that. And it's actually very, very stable. I am very pleasantly surprised by how well this is holding up. And then the last step is just whatever lighting you want to put inside, whether it's some fairy lights or the little battery operated tea lights, it's up to you. For this last DIY, I'm going to be using one of these little houses from Dollar Tree. Now, you don't have to do it this way. You may just want to use a frame. I found a free printable on Pinterest that has all the different like phrases and sayings and things like that from the movie. And all I'm going to do is just kind of pick what part of the printable I want on the house. And then I'm going to trace the house on the back of the paper, cut it out, use a glue stick and just stick it down on top of the house. And then for the home sign, I tried one more time to bust that little puppy off. I know some people said that they were able to get theirs off really easily. The lot that I got, I guess, are just on there forever. So I did have another little printable, and I went ahead and just stuck that on there in case I wanted to turn it around, or if someone saw the back, there was more, Christmas story related stuff on the back. And that's it. This one's finished. There you go. Christmas story in a nutshell. And this movie wraps up all of the Christmas movie Mondays that I did last year in 2020 in October. I am super excited for this month. I cannot wait to bring you all new Christmas movies. Let me know down below, out of these 5 movies, which is your favorite. Also, let me know, what are you really hoping makes the cut? Thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, I really, really appreciate it. I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye.